Hello everyone, my name is Cameron.
And I'm Brett.
And you're listening to The Last Alliance, a Rings of Power podcast.
We know it's a dangerous business going out your door, or when choosing a podcast, but we're glad you've joined our adventure as we discuss The Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power.
And so it begins.
Good morning, one and all, and welcome back to The Last Alliance. Stilson, I was nervous. I thought it was going to be a letdown after an awesome episode last week. Hardly the case. Hardly the case at all.
So did I. I was kind of mentally preparing myself for either the last three episodes are going to be bang, 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 like all awesome, or this is going to be the one that is like, gosh dang it, they did it again. But
non-stop action, and I think just right at the outset, huge kudos to the writers this episode.
Yeah, well, there wasn't a whole lot of action. There was just a lot of suspense, right?
That's a terrific point.
I think they did a great job because it's kind of easy to write action. The hard part with action is just the choreography, right? I think they did a great job, like you said, writing this script for this episode because the suspense had us the whole time.
Yeah, we had a mega punch from King Durin and like 2 fireballs hit the city. Yeah. And that's it.
Yeah, that was it. So anyway, yeah. Should we dive into our instant take good, bad, great?
Let's do it. Right at the outset, I was so excited. The title of this episode, Where Is He? I thought we were bringing Waldrick back. So let me just say that's my bad, that Waldrick is still out there. Just kidding. Hit us with your good.
Okay. It's a long interaction, so I'm not going to be able to quote the whole thing, but I thought that the interaction between Adar and Galadriel was actually pretty awesome. I thought that Adar's explanation of how Sauron works and the moment that they connected and bonded on being manipulated by him and how she finished his sentences even. I thought that was kind of a cool moment. Also, it was the first time, I don't know if you noticed, that she actually called him Uruk instead of Orc. And at the end, come to find out, he was just using her for information the whole time. So
I'm glad you called that your good. For me, that whole interaction felt like filler, and I probably just need to go back and rewatch the episode, which I will very soon.
Yeah.
Because it just seemed like the weak point of the episode, but in reality, I'm sure it was very strong. There was just so much going on.
It was just necessary for it to happen, right? Because it would have been a huge question mark or a huge gap if they would not have addressed, okay, Galadriel knows this, Adar knows this. They're both together right now. What's going on there? And I think that they did it pretty well, and it's going to be interesting to see how they fare since Halbrand sort of doesn't exist anymore. It's Annatar now, right? So even though they both know that Halbrand was Sauron, well, he's gone now. One thing I wanted to ask you is, what do you think about how Adar was able to guess himself that Halbrand was Sauron, and then to know that he was in his grasp?
That was the question I marked down for you. Is that at what point did he realize that was the case? Because last we saw Adar, he was marching to Eregion upon suggestion from Halbrand.
Right. And he continues to go forward, even knowing that Halbrand is who gave him the direction to go to Eregion. So it's like, how are those words? Those words from Galadriel have got to be echoing in his brain, but somehow he's convinced himself that he has outsmarted Sauron once, he can do it again.
I had a lot of questions from this interaction. Maybe one I'll ask here is, what exactly was the information he was trying to get Galadriel to reveal? Because when he said, "You've already revealed everything I'd hoped for," I was like, wait a minute, what did she reveal?
Well, I think he said in the episode two things. He wanted a confirmation that who he thought Sauron was and his location was correct. So he now knows that Sauron is in Eregion. And he wanted to know where to get a ring of power, I think. So, because that's kind of what he said to her at the end was, now that I know Sauron is in Eregion and who bears your ring, I don't really have any more need of you.
Okay. Yep, I kind of missed all those, so that's good.
So he wants a ring and he wants Sauron dead, basically.
Yeah. So are we just assuming then that word of the rings of power have kind of reached him as he's traveled north from Mordor, and the legend of these elven rings, it's just kind of common knowledge at this point?
Sure seems like it, and I can understand why if all of Elvendom is rejoicing that they are no longer fading. I can see how that word might get out.
Fair enough. Okay, great. Well, I'm glad you paid attention to that scene.
What was your good?
I went back and forth several times. There was so much to choose from this episode. I went with the stranger's trial, and really we haven't even done the trial yet. He's been introduced to his trial by Tom Bombadil. I'm a huge fan of the additional Gandalf gems that we got out of it. Want to mention a couple of them. Tom Bombadil's talking to him in the hut about we can all hear the whisperings of the secret fire. Secret fire kind of being a code name for Eru Iluvatar, the god of Middle Earth. When Gandalf is in Moria with the Fellowship in The Lord of the Rings, one of the things he tells the Balrog is, "I am a servant of the secret fire." And Tom Bombadil even says to the stranger, only when the vision of your heart is single to the service of the secret fire, then you will find your staff, you will know your name. A couple other nuggets. Tom Bombadil says, "You have all the time you need, unless there's somewhere else you wish to be." That "all the time you need" line reminds me of, again, in Moria, when Gandalf says to Frodo, "All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us." And then the third
I like that connection. I did not make that one.
The third one, again in Moria, I found it interesting that all three of these are connected with Gandalf's time in Moria. Tom Bombadil says to him, "Many that die deserve life. Some that live deserve death. Can you give it to them?" And Gandalf quotes that line verbatim to Frodo, talking about Gollum.
I do remember that.
So, to me, I feel like we've nearly confirmed it. We just need to hear the name. But
it's kind of like towards the end of season 1 when you were pretty 90% sure that Halbrand was Sauron, right? I feel like that's where we're at, but even more so with the stranger. Just tell us already.
And I mentioned in a previous recording that I've come around and I can understand, and I'm starting to appreciate what they're doing with all of these teases. It's almost like the writers are trying to tell us, we want you to experience the reveal of the stranger discovering who he is. This is a story about the stranger learning who he is. We'll give you some of these nuggets so that you can know in the back of your mind, yeah, this is Gandalf. But we also want you to experience with the stranger what it's like to find out your true identity. And
that is a good point. I like that perspective. I like that point of view.
So I'm on board as long as we get the name by the end of this season. If we don't get it in the next 2 episodes, I'm done.
Yeah, it would be butter scraped over too much bread at that point, right?
Beautiful reference. Well done.
So I have a question about that interaction with the stranger. What did you think about? Okay, first of all, like you mentioned, Tom Bombadil says. First of all, he says that the Dark Wizard got his staff here, right? And then he tells him the requirements to finding the staff, as you said, is to have your heart single to the service of the secret fire. Was that a requirement for the Dark Wizard? And if so, how do you reconcile that with his
Ooh.
current status?
Ooh. Wow. Did he at one point and his corruption just come over many, many unseen, unfilmed years then? Is that how we get there?
I don't know. I don't know if he, like you said, maybe there's just a lot of time that happened between the test and where he is currently. Some big event. Not sure. But it is interesting to think that if the Dark Wizard went through the same process, you would think that the same requirements were necessary. So I wonder if I almost just said Gandalf, but I wonder if the stranger is going to kind of try to reawaken that, core within the Dark Wizard, or if we're just going to have a head-to-head battle down the road. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. I don't even know if I should say it. Is the Dark Wizard wholly evil?
I think that is a huge theme of this show, right? To show that nothing is purely good or purely evil.
Oof. Might be a
So,
bold prediction brewing here.
and since we don't know a lot really about what happened with the Blue Wizards, they kind of have a lot of leeway to go in whatever direction, right?
Yeah. Speaking of
So,
that, one of the things we asked when we first met Tom Bombadil was, what's the show going to do with Tom? What kind of character are they going to make him? It sure seems like they've built him into this character being an actual emissary of Eru Iluvatar.
yes.
He is a messenger ultimately of God
Mm-hmm.
and intervenes when needed, which I like. That kind of fits with what I envision, so I like it a
Yeah,
lot.
and he's kind of outlining, trying to stress that point to him too, right? Of like, your main objective is to be a servant of the secret fire. All else is subsidiary to that. So,
See ya, Nori.
yeah, exactly. So that was going to be my other question is, how did you like how Tom's reaction to when the stranger brought up Nori and Poppy? Like, to me, the look on his face was like kind of a roll of the eyes kind of a thing, and like you're not seeing the big picture.
Yeah, gold, I thought. Just absolutely brilliant. I think the ultimate trial will be the stranger, whether it's manufactured or real, having to choose between Nori and his destiny, just like Tom said. I am stoked to see how they play that out in the last couple episodes.
I think that's a good call. I think that's a good call of some great foreshadowing. I think you're spot on with that. Anything else anything else you want to talk about with that scene or for your good?
No, sorry, that took a while. Let's move on. We can revisit this in our second breakfast.
No, it was good. It was good. We can talk about whatever. Whatever. So for your bad, what did you have?
Okay. Oh man. What was up with the stupid Poppy nobody kiss? That was the biggest waste of time I have ever seen in my life. If
Yeah,
we wanted a kiss, you could have given us Muriel and Elendil.
that's the thing. I think
Why
that
did we need the... Ugh.
and I've thought about this. Uh, I wouldn't say quite a bit, but it has come to mind in watching this show because, well, a lot of the stuff that is can come off as controversial to audiences these days kind of revolves around love stories, right? And I think that that's what keeps Lord of the Rings such a fan favorite, is because they don't kind of delve into all that stuff. They just kind of stick with good and evil, right? And so seeing that today, it kind of made me wonder, like, is this going to become an even bigger theme? Not that Lord of the Rings doesn't have love stories, but it's not really a
It's
huge
not why I'm
part,
watching
right?
Rings of Power.
Right, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see if they continue down that path or kind of keep with the feel that the Lord of the Rings has already had up to this point. So,
Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of Nori. I think she's an awesome character. But even her brief scene with the Goond, I was like, man, I just don't feel like we needed any of that. And at the end of the day, I sure wish I had turned the volume down on my TV during that kiss. Just unnecessary.
yeah.
What
All
about
right.
you?
So
What was your bad?
Okay. So my bad. I have two. First one is actually in that scene that was your bad, but for a different reason. And it's a very small, stupid thing. But did you see the snake that she was holding?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
They
Who
were
was holding
like
a snake?
Poppy. They were like that's why they were sitting by each other in the first place, is because they were like trying to get venom out of the snake. You totally missed it. Okay. Well,
Well, this is why we have second breakfast.
we're going to take a pause right now and you're going to go look at it. 1 second.
A few moments later.
Yeah,
All right.
you go pick up that snake at Kmart.
Yes, and that's where I'm like, not only was that a choice to have the fakest snake I have ever seen, and on a show where you have some of the best visual effects out there right now.
$1 billion got
Yeah.
you that snake.
And so not only was it a choice, but then they kept including it in the shot. Like, there's just, minutes, it seemed like, of footage with that snake.
Oh, I wish I had noticed it so I could watch the snake instead.
Of the kiss. So that was, like I said, a small thing, but still. Anyway, and I put this as a bad just because I did not see the point to it, really. And maybe you did, but at the beginning, the Arondir scene, what was that about?
I don't know. That was when I was like, oh boy, is this episode gonna just fall flat? And like his innate ability to think, I will check this orc's arm wrappings because that's where a map is
Yeah.
gonna be. Like that was a little weird. Is it just showing that he's on his way to come fight the legions?
Well, and that's what I'm saying, is it's like, was it that critical to show us how he got clued in to go to Eregion? Because you already kind of hinted that he had somewhere else to be when he said he had other promises that he had to fulfill, or whatever he said last episode, or maybe 2 episodes ago. So it's just like, was it really that necessary? Because at the beginning of that scene, I was like, oh, they're kind of giving Arondir an independent storyline. Let's see where this goes. And then it just ended.
And
And
that was it.
nothing really came of it. So then I was like, what was that about? Anyway, so that was my bad part too.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Again, not terrible bads, and the
No.
bads only lasted a couple minutes, so
Yeah.
good news for the episode overall. You want to take us through your great? Oh
Sure.
man, so many
So
greats. Here we go.
there were, and I have two. Mine was more for the scenery and the imagery. I thought that they did a great job on the spell with Celebrimbor when he goes out of the tower. I have some questions about that though. We'll get to that in a second. But the biggest great, I really liked the sea trial with the queen. I thought that the suspense there was golden. I thought that the imagery was pretty solid. Her sitting there in the middle of the still pool before the worm took her under, like picture perfect. It made you think, holy crap, what if I was a blind person sitting in the middle of that pool just waiting?
Terrifying. Absolutely. I would have been like, nope, you know what? Just go ahead and chop my head off.
100%. And the depiction of the worm and how it kind of like took her in and did its little judgment thing or whatever and then spit her back out. I just thought that whole thing was really well done.
Did we see the worm actually like swallow her, like Jonah and the
No.
whale?
I think it just drug her down with its little tentacle things. Is what I think happened.
That's the one thing that, and it probably would have failed if I was in charge. But I was like, I wanted to just add a little more suspense and show it with its mouth. Its mouth was gaping open, but I wanted to see like a shot of its mouth clamping shut over her kind of thing, and then spit her out. But
spit her out. Well, I thought it was pretty well done. My question, though, with the Celebrimbor scene, as much as I liked it, what did you think? Obviously, directly comparable to the Galadriel scene at the end of season 1, right? So, what did you think about? You notice how Galadriel was able to very quickly, it seemed like at least, tell that it was all a ruse. Meanwhile, Celebrimbor walks out of the tower hearing screams and explosions, and it's nighttime, to walking out hearing birds chirping, harps playing, and it's daybreak. How does he not put 2 and 2 together there? Is that an error on the showrunner's part, or was that on purpose to show us something? And if so, what was it trying to show us?
So I have two thoughts. The first one is we see they make a very pointed effort to show us that Sauron is doing his little neck yoga stretch with the disembodied voices. And
yeah,
at first
it seems like he was like going into the unseen world for a sec. Hold on. Yeah.
And then when I first saw that, I was like, what is going on? And then when you see Celebrimbor step outside, it was like, whoa. So I think we saw a much more intentional spell being cast by Sauron as opposed to just kind of in the moment being able to call on it with Galadriel. My second thought is, and I'd have to go all the way back to episode 1 of this season, but Gil-galad, is it Gil-galad or Elrond? One of them talks about the deceiver having, once someone has turned their mind over to the deceiver, he can shape their very thoughts, their very reality. I think Celebrimbor's just been so immersed in Sauron's mind and will that it's just so malleable.
And I think that would be my best guess as to what they're trying to show, is to show just to what extent Celebrimbor is possessed, basically.
What'd you think about his little motivational speech to Celebrimbor about, I have it written down here. Upon my immortal being, when the history of this age is written, the Silmarils, well, they will merit little more than a whisper. But your rings, they will be deemed the most precious creations in all Middle-earth.
Well, and couple that with if you walk out of this tower right now, I'll make sure everyone knows that the rings are your fault.
Talk about an abusive relationship.
100%. For the last 2 episodes, it's been nothing but abuse. Celebrimbor's been his little punching bag for 2 episodes now.
I like that we had a callback to Feanor's hammer. We saw that in like the first episode of last season. And that's kind of the temptation that Annatar uses is here's Feanor's hammer. Best him.
If
Best
you want to
yourself.
if you want to get Celebrimbor, just mention Feanor and his legacy.
Yeah.
He'll start salivating and do backflips at will. What did you think about how he got the mithril, though, from Narvi, allegedly?
Oh, yeah. Where on earth did that come from? Did I miss something?
Well, he said it didn't show anything with Narvi. He just said that he got it from Narvi. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what happened.
Okay.
We do know that he was with the king alone before Prince Durin showed up. So maybe he made the king hand it over without the king even really knowing it, since the king is also seemingly possessed.
Maybe
I'm
we need
using
to index
because it's the best way I can explain what's going on.
Absolutely. We might need to index that one and come back and visit it again. There's still the question for me of how much does Annatar really need Celebrimbor?
Yes. Let's get to that in a second. We haven't finished your great yet, though. What's your great?
Oh, man, so much. Okay, so my great is the Durin versus Durin interaction. And it's a great for me just because of something I read, an interview with Owain Arthur, the actor of Prince Durin. He said that filming all these scenes was really emotional for him because the interactions with King Durin remind him of dealing with a loved one going through Alzheimer's.
Oh.
And, don't you see that come out really strong?
You can, yeah.
Especially his quote. He says, Disa's kind of giving the pep talk. We're going to go stand in front of the gate. They're going to slice us open, and everyone's going to see what a fool your father is. And Durin says, I can't do it, Disa. I look at him, and in his eyes, I still see my father. Lost and far away, yes, but he's still in there.
Dang, that is some good, rich, deep context. I'm glad you saw that.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just leave it at that, because that really hit me strongly. What a perfect allegory or analogy of what that is really like.
So true. I like that. That was a good great. All right, so I've just got like some random thoughts scattered throughout the episode. If you want to just talk about them, then
Let's dive in.
Whatever you've got, we'll sprinkle in as well. So, I just wanted to highlight there is one issue with Morgoth's crown that they have shown off in this season and the lore. So, in the lore, the crown, once the Valar defeat Morgoth, the crown is actually beat into a shackle to be put around Morgoth's neck, and they use it. It's used as the handcuffs or whatever assembly for dragging him back to the halls of Mandos. So strictly by the lore, that crown no longer exists, or if it does, it's in Valinor.
I'd imagine it was a lot bigger than the crown we're seeing in this show too.
Yeah, I would imagine so. And something else though I thought was interesting is when you bring the crown into it, he kind of treated it as if it also had some power, right? So it's kind of like there is definitely an obsession at this point with a seeming reliance on relics to be able to wield the power that you think you need, you know? So, very interesting concept, I thought, with that.
Can I ask or maybe point out, in his conversation with Galadriel, does she say it or does he say it? They talk about it is not his lies that we have to defeat or extinguish. It's him. We've got to get to the root of the problem. We can't just be putting out fires. We got to defeat him. You talk about like the power of these artifacts, these strong-willed people. Just very interesting that Tolkien's crux of the story is that the smallest of people can change
Yeah.
the fate of the world.
Yes. And it's interesting to keep in mind that of anyone living in Middle Earth today in the show, Adar probably knows Sauron the best. And he seems pretty fixated on nothing else matters besides Sauron's destruction. Even more, I mean, not as vocally represented, but maybe even more than Galadriel.
Well, he's gonna go, like you said, he's gonna go try and take him down in this battle we're gonna see.
Because like I said, he knows him better than anyone. So he knows all of his tricks, and he knows that Halbrand, the person who told him to attack Eregion, that he's going right into his plans, but he still is like,
bring it on.
Worth it for the chance even.
Ooh.
To end him.
Yeah.
Yep. So
it's going to be interesting to see how Sauron gets this army of orcs to follow him, because you got a glimpse of the orcs kind of at the end of Adar and Galadriel's discussion. The orcs are like, oh crap, Sauron's still alive?
Yes.
Like they despise him. So that'll be interesting.
Yes. All right. So another thing with the stranger. What did you think when Tom Bombadil? I think he said this last episode too. Tom Bombadil told him, "You have failed every trial up until this point." What trials has the stranger gone through and failed that I have missed? Obviously,
I think we've all missed them. Matt, our editor, hi Matt, asked the same thing, and I interpreted it as being they've kind of been going through Wizardry 101 at his hut for quite a while. Okay. And so I think there's been some off-screen trials that he's referring to.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because they're obviously doing some sort of meditation, seance type thing. They're practicing something when we see them.
True. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Because I was just like, did I not catch something? So
no, it seems like, and to Matt's point, it seems like the stranger's done everything perfectly fine up to this point.
Okay, sweet. Also with the stranger, when is someone gonna get him something to wear besides that fishnet bathrobe he's got on? I thought that was a blanket you threw on in desperation in the first season, but
it
here
was
we
like
are.
Their mosquito net.
Yeah. And it's completely a bathrobe. So I'm like, at what point is he going to get some actual clothes?
That's what happens once you get your staff. Then Tom Bombadil will be like, now we're going to Forever 21.
Yeah, seriously. Speaking of attire, though, what did you think about Annatar's attire in this episode? Stark difference compared to what it has been before.
Yes, what brought that on? What does it represent? To me, it looks his first little white robe looked kind of dorky to me. I think he looks much more like a soldier.
It was just humble. I think it was just humble and meek initially. It seemed just very plain, almost like a refined elven burlap sack almost.
Yes. He seems more like a soldier now.
He seems more like an evil lord.
Bum, bum, bum.
And I think that it's just, if anything, it's just to show us how comfortable he's getting at being more himself in Eregion.
Yeah. He's taken on kind of this, what do you call him? Chancellor, prime minister role now for Eregion. He's become much more public facing.
Yes. And he has just subjected all of Eregion to whatever he wants. So I don't think there's any more point of acting the innocent, humble Lord of Gifts, innocent bystander,
Yeah.
All right. Lots of questions with him actually, and what's going on in Eregion. So why do you think that? And this is kind of show specific, right? Because of the deviation from the timeline that Tolkien put forth and all of that. This next question is just show specific. So why do you think he wants Eregion destroyed?
Would it just be simply that that's the capital of Elvendom? And
Well, Linden is the capital. Eregion is a great city for sure, but Linden is still the capital, and I would say the source of their strength. But yeah, Eregion is definitely a big deal to lose. But just for context, in the text, the reason that Eregion is attacked is because Annatar is cast out, right? And the rings, though, are still in Eregion, and so that is why Eregion, what the orcs come to lay siege to it, and it gets destroyed, is because Sauron is trying to fight his way in to get the rings back, but he's already there. So now I'm like, okay, well, why are you trying to destroy Eregion at this point? And is it just to deliver a blow to Elvendom? Is that all it is? I think probably part of it is we're going to see it play into his master plan of how to assume control of the orc army.
you take out the forge, like you've removed any chance of the elves trying to come back with additional rings, kind of like the 3 elven rings that he didn't touch.
Yeah.
So you make your rings of power, and then you destroy every trace of how they came about.
Yeah, true.
And again, we're condensing hundreds of years into 8 episodes. The forging of the rings took hundreds of years.
Right.
So, question about Annatar. He shows up in Khazad-dûm, which was cool. Do you think his intention was for King Durin to refuse his offer all along? Because he walked away with his signature grin again.
He did. And there's a lot about that interaction, right? So, first of all, he was there with the king alone for a minute. The king allowed him to summon his son, which is interesting all by itself. And then once the king refused him, he had no issue and just walked away. Now, he also saw in the fire the Balrog. So
Did he see him, or did he awake him, or did he say, be free?
well, that's the thing is I was going to ask you, like, what was that little thing all about? Was it just an acknowledgement that now he knows there's a Balrog there and he didn't know that before? And so he's content leaving them to their own devices, knowing that that ring is going to drive them to unearth that Balrog. Because
Yeah.
I guess my personal opinion is I think he got there alone with the king originally, got the mithril from the king under some sort of a spell probably, and then without the king knowing it, told the king to summon his son to kind of put his son's concerns at ease, probably. Just like lull him into a state of security, right? And then all the while knowing that I've got the mithril, there's a Balrog here. He's not giving up that ring. Like, my work here is done.
I don't think we have all the answers. Maybe we will in our second breakfast unearth some other things, but TBD on Sauron's connection with the Balrog, I think.
Yeah.
I had one other question about Annatar, and maybe you have some others, but mine is, what was with the palm cutting that we see him, some sort of ceremonial bloodshed from his palm? And we'll just point out that's the second time we've seen a palm cutting act this season. The first was with the cultists out in Rune.
Mm-hmm. Very good connection.
What are we doing here?
Yeah, I did not. I saw obviously him cut his hand this time, and I just thought that true creation requires sacrifice line. But yes, that is a even better connection of the cultists cutting their hand out in Rune. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it was to be able to cast his spell or what it was. I think, like you said, there's going to be more to do with that down the road, I would assume.
Yeah, I'll have to go watch again and see where that happened in the timeline of the show too. But
yeah. What did you think though about Celebrimbor totally losing his cool and shoving Annatar? I was like, that is in all the depictions of ticked off elves, I've never seen one lose their temper like that.
The note I wrote down, he pushed him.
Like, I feel like self-control is just the epitome of what an elf is.
Yeah. And he's just losing it. He can't remember Mirdania's name. To be fair, that whole thing may have been just to remind the audience of her name. But he can't remember her name, can't remember where he's putting stuff. He's doesn't know what's real or not. He's losing it, and we're going to see him just hit absolute rock bottom here soon.
Speaking of, I did think it was interesting that they chose that to call out of him forgetting her name, and her name specifically, especially in light of last week's second breakfast episode where the theory that she's Galadriel's daughter surfaced.
Ooh.
I still don't think that that's the case, but at the same time, I'm like, why are you drawing attention to her name? Because there's a million other things that you could have pointed to that would point out Celebrimbor is losing it,
And I don't think we're done with her yet. I think we've still got more to see between her and Sauron.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I was like, and you've already kind of shown that the Smiths of Eregion are against Celebrimbor, so you didn't need to add, he forgot my name, he's such a meanie,
Right. Yeah. Annatar makes sense. He's messing with Galadriel, messing with Celebrimbor. What's the significance of him messing with this random Smith?
Yeah.
And is she going to be a victim of his manipulation and a tragedy too? We shall see.
Right. So, what did you think? Well, just one more thing about Celebrimbor. Watching him in this episode specifically, I was like, man, it is like watching an addict. Someone who is just like, at the outset, no, I can't. No, I can't. And then, okay, maybe just a little bit, And that's totally what he is doing right now. He just cannot. He wants to resist. There's a huge part of him that wants to resist, knows he should resist, but give it a little bit of time with Annatar, and he's like, okay, maybe just a little bit. Or a little bit won't hurt.
This has just been a phenomenal visual representation of, Satan, evil, call it what you will, but, addiction, depression, abuse, just
all the good stuff.
Oh, geez, yeah. It's enthralling, and I'm looking forward to when we come back and do some deep dives on this season, and we can kind of put all the pieces together and look at those themes like we did with season 1, and oh, man.
Yeah. So, did you have any other one-offs or points?
I think that's it for now with Annatar.
Okay.
We need to get to Numenor, don't we?
Yeah.
Maybe I should have mentioned this as part of my grade, but MVP of the episode, Elendil, by far.
He is definitely being brought to the light of this is the future founder of the great kingdoms of men in Middle-earth.
One of our big beefs of season 1 was nobody knew how to give a good speech, and Elendil finally stepped up and gave it. And do you accept our Pharazôn as the rightful king? I do not.
Yep.
Till the end of her days, Queen Muriel, daughter of Tar Palantir,
Yep.
We'll have to go back and watch it again. Oh, he's the only traitor here is you. Boom. I'll follow that guy.
Big words. I wrote down bold move, Cotton. Bold move.
Yeah, and then on cue, Muriel comes in and says, "What the heck are you doing, man? This is not what I told you to do. You've got to bow down to Pharazôn." But he kind of stands up to her, finally.
He does. And that exchange is my quote of the week, but we'll get to that in a minute. Something that I wanted to ask you, though, is so we went from the last interaction with Muriel and Elendil being somewhat confusing, but it seemed like Muriel had a vision of what needed to happen, right? And then we get to he's imprisoned, and she comes out initially saying, bend the knee.
Yeah.
And he straightens her out. And then, so at that point, you're like, oh, Elendil's totally messing up the vision right now, But then she comes back out at his trial and is like, if we're going to walk the path of the faithful, this is the first, or I got to take the first step, or something like that, right?
Yeah, it kind of makes right, kind of this, what we've seen the last couple episodes from her of this just resignation. She's accepting, oh, well, I guess this isn't what the Valar want, and yep, I guess Pharazôn's new king. It kind of reconciles that for me a little bit, to say, no, there is a place to stand up and fight back against the evil, right?
Yeah, but my thing is like they're going from okay, she knows the path to does she know the path to okay, it looks like she knows the path again. And I guess I just wanted to hear your thoughts on, do you think that she actually knows the path, or is she just walking very confidently in whatever direction she feels like at the moment is the path?
To me, it seems like the blinding that she got in season 1 really made her reconsider, and just the reception when she got back home and her father's died. It was a moment of, do I actually believe what I told myself I believe for all these years?
And that's a good point. That's a good point.
And I'm willing to say, yeah, I think we all encounter times when rubber hits the pavement. Do we actually believe in the values that we hold dear? And she needed some time to figure that out, and I think I sense a bit more resolution on her face now.
Yeah. What did you think about Pharazôn in this episode?
You know what? I enjoy the character Farazan that they're painting for us. I don't enjoy him meaning like he's an admirable person, but I like the way they're portraying him. He is sick of his kid, isn't he?
I was going to say, once again, we see how disgusted he is by his son.
Man, talk about a villain arc for Kemen. It's
Yeah.
coming.
Yep, 100%. And I think the biggest question for out of Numenor right now is, where do you go from here? Where are they going from here? Because it looked like we were kind of past the breaking point of the faithful having any sort of control in the matters of Numenor. But with Muriel's trial today, that was a huge swing the other direction. So where do you go from here at this point?
I wonder if this was the last we saw of Numenor this season. Just the way they left us with Farazan looking into the Palantir, and he sees Mount Doom, he sees the Eye of Sauron, he sees Halbrand. I don't know if he's made the connection that is Sauron, or if he even realizes who and what Sauron is. I'm not even totally sure what he was feeling or thinking in the moment. He looked a little panicked to me, but I think that was them teeing us up and saying, hey, season 3, Sauron's coming to Numenor. Sauron and Farazan are going to have a little meet and greet.
Yes. The only thing that I thought is maybe this opens up the door for the forced marriage thing to happen now that Muriel's back on the table for being the queen.
He's the king voted by the people. She's the queen by right.
Yep.
Let's
so
just
maybe
formalize
this is the forced marriage door we just opened.
What does that say about your bold prediction of the
love story between Elendil? And I think that is already a check mark. It's already done.
They just didn't need a kiss to prove it. Like
there is a love affair going on there.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone's gonna say differently. And we both knew that they were never gonna get married. So that's why that's why it was a love affair.
Okay.
You know?
So you think it's gone as far as it's gonna get?
No, I think that it's still gonna be there until one of them dies. They're still gonna have this thing going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that it's gonna go to
come join me in Middle Earth.
Yeah.
Darn. They're a fun duo to watch.
Yeah, I think they're gonna stick with the original lore on that one, and I think Muriel's gonna die. But who knows? We'll see.
The one other character that we haven't mentioned is Eregion, Elendil's daughter. What do you think about her little sob story? Sorry, I guess my bias is coming out. What do you think of her pleading to her father in prison?
I thought that it was a classic example. We'll see if I can put the right words to it, but it was a classic example of someone knowing that, well, I'll put it this way. An extremely selfish person trying to convey or pretend that they are doing things for the right reasons is what I thought. She was totally trying to convince Elendil, and probably mostly herself, that she loved him, that she was doing what she thought was right, and a sincere plea for him to follow suit. When in reality, all she was there doing was trying to comfort her conscience. You
don't think there was any sincere love and concern that her father was going to die and she would lose another family member?
I think that she was trying to avoid future guilt, and that's it.
Wow.
Yep.
Because she really sucks then.
She does. That's why I'm telling you, Nazgul material. I think that yeah, she was just totally there trying to. It wasn't an attempt to save his life because she loved him. I think that and just look at what she's done. She is so past the point of loving and honoring your father. She's on the Aarian train. She's in it to win it for Aarian, and in step with that, motive, she's dressing up an attempt to comfort her conscience by trying to say, I love you, don't do this.
I think I mostly agree with you. However, wasn't it Aarian that went and begged that the queen, she'd be allowed to go get the queen and bring the queen to him?
It was. And she made a huge point about how much that cost her, that she had to lick the floor with her begging.
No.
It was so difficult.
Such a sacrifice.
Yeah, so difficult for her.
Okay. So maybe she didn't foresee the end result being, you kind of put Farazan's plans back a few miles.
If anything, I think that she was, again, it was in an effort to convince herself that she did everything. I did everything to save him. It's not my fault. And the other part is it continues to loop the two of them together so that their fates become one. So if one dies, hopefully it's two birds with one stone.
Another
and Farazan probably saw that as well, and that's why he allowed it to happen in the first place.
Oh, good point. I think Farazan's a sly, clever, measured, evil guy.
He is a very good politician.
Yes, yeah. I just want to mention Elendil's rebuke to Aarian when she says, "Please, father, swallow your pride." He says, if after all this, all you see is pride, then there are no words left for us to speak.
Boom. Cut right through all of her crap right to the core, and that's what left her speechless. And that's why I'm even more convinced that she was only there for herself.
And more of why I'm convinced that Elendil could have hopped in the pool and he would have been just fine.
Absolutely. But it was better, actually, that Muriel did.
Yeah, we've got a bit of a conflict now with the good people of Numenor.
Indeed. I wrote down, they've got to be the most confused people ever. So who's the king, queen, whatever it is?
Whose name are we supposed to chant for 48 straight hours now?
Yeah, exactly. So who knows? Yeah, I was like, those got to be some confused people right now, especially the ones that aren't attending court every day and are just, the smith down in his shop or the baker in his shop. Like, they got to be asking themselves, what's going on around here?
Well, anything else?
Yeah, with Numenor, we saw that Farazan looked into the Palantir at the end, like you said, saw Sauron. Do you think that, and like we've said, we think season 3 is going to revolve a lot around Sauron and Numenor, right? And the fall of Numenor. Do you think Sauron is actually going to go to Numenor, or do you think he's just going to communicate to Farazan via the Palantir? Is that what it was trying to show us today?
It could be. It could be that communication channel's already open. I bet we see him go there. I think it'd be fun.
I agree. Like I've said before, I think that there's just too much involved with his presence in Numenor for the story of the fall of Numenor that I think that it would be an error to not have him go there. You want to get to our bold predictions?
Let's do it. Waldrig as King of the Dead, he's still dead.
Killed in action.
Yeah. Theo as the Witch King, no mention of him this episode. And I think we may be done with him this season. Disa as the assassin and ring bearer. She may end up being an assassin. She's got the fire back.
I was going to say, Disa, your prediction with Disa kind of somewhat had some life breathed into it tonight. But the biggest counter still is she seems to be most definitely on the side of self-control, sees the ring as evil, all that.
Yep. Not feeling particularly good about that one.
Yeah. Elrond and Durin. I think the only thing was the preview for what's coming up next with I Need Your Axe. So it's looking like that's going to be a good thing. Aarion and Kemen being Nazgul, I think both of those are still holding strong. Gandalf the Blue, even more so, like we talked about today with you pointing out all the Gandalfisms.
What an incredible call by Matt.
Elendil Mariel love affair. We can probably just quit following up on that one. It's happening.
50 points to Slytherin.
Indeed.
I always pictured you as a Slytherin. Are you a Slytherin?
I am 100%.
I figured. Of course you are.
In fact, so on Amazon Prime Video, you can pick your avatar or whatever for your account, like your viewing account. And mine is Sauron, Annatar. And Kenzie's like, why did you pick him? And I was like, well, I am a Slytherin, so.
The snake issue that you found, no wonder it struck a chord with you.
Okay, what else do we have here?
My bonus one, though, was that Sauron eventually kills Prince Durin. Personally.
Yes, that is right. And I think that one tracked a little positive today because Prince Durin
now have
is
a
obviously
face-to-face.
Yeah, Prince Durin is obviously on Sauron's mind.
He's the one person who even detects that something might be wrong upon meeting this guy.
Yes. Annatar specifically, right? Because
right.
other people are clued into the Halbrand character, but Annatar, no one in Eregion. Speaking of, I was like, at first I was thinking today, like, how is a city of so many elves not questioning this Annatar guy, this newbie who just showed up and is now running the place?
He didn't just show up, he showed up in a heavenly vision of the Forge.
Which explains Celebrimbor being smitten, but no one else saw that. And but then I was like, well, it is a condensed timeline and he is Sauron, so he's pretty good at what he does. All right, any new bold predictions?
Not right now. I do have a bold prediction for how I think the series will end after season 5, but I will share that at the end of this season.
Okay, good, because I also want to share what I kind of predict is going to be the main building blocks of each season. I've been thinking about that too, so
we'll do that in our season recap.
Yeah, and then my newest prediction from the second breakfast episode was that one of the masked riders that we see in Rune is actually Kamul, one of the Nazgul from the east. And didn't really get any traction on that this episode, so we'll see.
Okay. Well, I think we got through each scene at least. Still a ton to unpack. We look forward to addressing it in second breakfast. Shall we leave with our quote of the week from our MVP of the week, Elendil? He says, "Faith is not faith if it is not lived."
Yeah, he was full of great one-liners today, especially just in that whole scene in the prison was basically one-liner after one-liner after one-liner from Elendil.
He was feeling the fire. The secret fire was alive and well.
He was. Mine also comes from there, where he said, "It is hardly mercy to ask a man to set his integrity aflame." And it's like, I wonder how many people actually think that these days. But so true.
Oh, so good. He is my favorite character, I think, of the whole show.
100%. Yep. Especially up till this point. So, anyway, that wraps us up, right? So
That does. Send us your comments, questions, your quotes of the week, your bold predictions. We'll discuss them in our second breakfast review of episode 6. Where is he? Where is Waldrig?
he's dead.
Thank you for joining our fellowship on this episode of The Last Alliance, a Rings of Power podcast.
And if you enjoyed this episode even half as well as you should have liked, or liked half of it half as well as it deserved, please subscribe, comment, and share.
We'll see you next time.